Hi, I'm Terry Rose from Southern Cross University, and I've been here at the Knowledge to Know How Forum talking about plant nutrition in the tea tree industry. So a few take-home messages. Firstly, it's probably worth getting your soil tested fairly regularly, just a 0 to 10 centimetre topsoil test, just to keep a bit of an eye on things like pH, organic carbon, and just track them over time to make sure, one, you're not drifting downwards, say for organic matter, or that you're not depleting particular nutrients. The second thing is we don't have any specific critical values for tea tree for things like coal oil phosphorus or other available nutrients. So it's very hard to make a one-off decision on whether to apply fertiliser or whether not to apply fertiliser based on current soil tests. Because tea tree is a perennial plant and has roots down to depth and probably stores some energy in the crown even after harvest, soil tests are unlikely to be the way forward for the industry, in my opinion. I think we probably need to move towards plant tissue testing, where we can sample some leaf not too long after harvest, get it tested at an accredited laboratory, look at the nutrient levels, and if some levels are below a critical threshold, that then tells us we need to go out and apply a particular nutrient in whatever form, whether that's through manure or synthetic nutrients. In the absence of having any critical values, so at present we just don't have the information, the best growers can do at the moment is to be aware of how much nutrient they are removing from the paddock. So when you've harvested and you have your mulch either before or after harvest, you can send that off to get a sample analysed at a laboratory. It'll tell you the percentage of various nutrients in the mulch. If you know how much you've taken off in terms of tonnes, you can then calculate and say, okay, I know I've just removed so many kilograms or hundreds of kilograms of, say, potassium or calcium, phosphorus off my paddock, and at least that then gives you some indication of whether you might need to replace some at some point. But moving forward, hopefully over the next few years, we will be able to develop some sort of critical plant tissue test for the industry to better inform nutrition in tea tree. On nitrogen, you are going to get some losses even in your mulch piles. So even if you're applying your own mulch back to the farm, you're probably going to need to top up your soil nitrogen. That's partly due to losses in the mulch pile, but it's also because you get losses from soil. So you're going to get possibly a little bit of gaseous losses, but leaching is generally on the north coast one of our main ways that we lose nitrogen. Tea tree is probably more efficient than other crops at scavenging nitrogen because it's got roots to depth. So I think for nitrogen, if you know how much you can either reapply as your mulch or you know how much you took off in the last crop, and so for a particular target yield, you know how much the plant needs, you can then try and come up with a budget as to how much you might need to apply for the next crop. As a general rule in Australian agriculture, we would say you assume the plant gets about 50% of what is put on. So if your plant needs, for example, to take up 100 kilos to reach a particular yield, 100 kilos of nitrogen, you probably need to put 200 on. That's the general rule of thumb. For tea tree, we don't have specific data, but given that we know we have low nitrous oxide emissions, which suggests that we're not having build-ups of nitrate in soil, we know that we've got roots to depth already. They don't have to grow down through the season, they're already there. We suspect that tea tree is probably a lot more efficient than other crops at actually obtaining nitrogen. So you could possibly say, assume your plants will get back 70–80% of the nitrogen you apply. So when you do a budget, if you know how much is being taken off in your leaf, and therefore that's how much the next crop probably wants to get up into its shoots to get that same yield, if you assume 70–80% of uptake, you can calculate how much nitrogen you need to apply. And again, whether you're applying that as manure or synthetic fertiliser, that's up to you. If you're applying it as manure, just be aware that if you're broadcasting manure on the surface without incorporation, you're probably going to lose a lot of nitrogen through volatilisation. So you may need to top it up at some point with some synthetic fertiliser.